The buck stops with me. I've got to get our football team to understand and recognize that you've got to play this game for 4 quarters with a mentality. We just did not for some reason. We thought we were somebody else. We thought we were the two-time national champion Georgia Bulldogs or something else. I don't know what we thought, but we were mistaken. That was LSU coach Brian Kelly after the Tigers, to me, inexplicable 45-24 loss to Florida State. I actually have a lot to say about this game, and I know this is primarily a Georgia audience, but they just – he's completely correct. I mean, Florida State was not the better team in the first half. And this is all complete due credit to Mike Norvell and what Florida State did down in Orlando. But if you're LSU and you have your foot on the gas, the mistakes Florida State was making, the decisions that Brian Kelly made. I mean, Brian Kelly cost LSU that win last night more than anybody else. And, you know, and I do think this is a great example of teams. I'm going to say it, but I really hate even saying it, which is teams believing the hype before they've done anything. And maybe that will shift to Florida State now. I don't know. But I could never see – I have not seen under Kirby Georgia teams just – and I don't say this lightly either, just giving up. I mean, if LSU thinks they're going to get into the college football playoff with a 28-point loss, that was never going to happen. Like that, the recovery time of that, no. 21-point, I think, is slightly different conversation. But that landslide was just a disaster for LSU last night. And I don't know how you recover from that because your team's not where they need to be at all. And LSU should have had enough of a margin of error coming out of the first half that sort of result doesn't happen. Like, they certainly should have had at least a 9-point lead. If not, frankly, if not a 17-point lead. But that was an inexcusable loss to me, in my opinion, from what we saw last night. And no, they're not we thought we were the two-time national champion Georgia Bulldogs or something. I don't know what we thought, but we were mistaken. They didn't think they were, maybe they may have thought they were Georgia, but I guess I'll put it to you like this. This is the best way to put this. Georgia doesn't think it's Georgia. It's just scared to death somebody's going to take their starting position. That's what it is, and that's what we saw the other day. Our friends at EcoPoly have been great this season. I'm sitting in one of their rocker chairs right now. This is a 20-year warranty that you're going to get from our friends at EcoPoly with their products made in Georgia. Look, this is awesome. All weather resistance, 20-year warranty. It is definitely easy to clean. I've got some chairs outside that we had the lawn cut the other day, fade resistance, and they got grass all over it, made in Georgia, 20 years, totally recycled. I saw some people tailgating, man. I'm telling you right now, in your backyard, you're going to want, I can rock in this thing again, 250 pounds. It completely holds me, no problem at all. Look at these Adirondacks. These Adirondacks are the real deal. Okay, there's a 15% off code, free shipping. It's right down below with the link. Our friends at EcoPoly, they're making it a lot easier for us to watch games because we have much more comfortable chairs to watch when we're watching them. But Florida State, man, I think there's two things here at the same time. A, LSU should not have lost that game. I know it sounds crazy when someone loses by 21 to say that, but if you watch the game, Florida State was undisciplined. They were getting personal foul penalties. It was insane. And LSU just, instead of taking the easy money, Brian Kelly just pushed it too far. Said, well, I got it on the first one. But, if you can't score in your first, 5 plays from the 1-yard line, maybe you just kick the field goal, and grab the 3 points. At minimum, you're up 6 there at the half. But they just did not respond like champions at all. But I have to say that Florida State did. Florida State, that was an outstanding. The second half from Florida State was complete mental toughness, obviously physical toughness. All these guys were tough physically, okay? This is about mental toughness in college football. Florida State displayed a very serious mental toughness that you just, if you haven't seen from Florida State a ton over the years, or they wouldn't be 10-3 last year or whatever, they're 10-4, or their problem they should not get too excited about was the way they played in the first half was really bad. Really bad. The quarterback, everybody celebrated him after the game. They weren't watching a lot of the first quarter and second quarter. They were not good in the first and second quarter. I mean, his guy's throwing the football all over the place and not to the color maroon. I mean, it was not good. And then the quarter, I mean, Jay Daniels has got like a death wish, it seems. I just don't know why we're jumping into piles, waiting to be suplexed into the turf. It didn't make sense to me at all, but it was just it just is so much fun. Here's our our story about Brian Kelly and his comments. I just didn't understand. If Florida State needs to be given all due credit for the comeback win. LSU should be very concerned with the fact that they wilted like that. I mean, their defensive line was eating Florida State's lunch all night long. They were crushing those guys. And, it was a bad loss for LSU. A bad loss. And I mean, I think if it would have been a 10-point loss, it would have been a bad loss. But man, they just got straight up exhausted. And, that turned ugly quick. And you cannot have that if you're those teams. You cannot have that if you're trying to get in the playoff. I mean, you can lose a game. But I think now, particularly, we're just going to have to see. I mean, we've not seen Clemson play yet. I don't know that that's necessarily different than it was a season ago. If it's not different than it was a season ago, then yes, Florida State can win that league for sure, whatever parameters you want to put on it. But I want to see Clemson play. I want to see what they've got up front. They might not match up Florida State the same way, but LSU was eating their lunch. And then to lose that game by just – it was like, one problem that Brian has talked about in the past, Brian Kelly, is they want to have depth at LSU. You could tell they didn't have it the way you wanted it because Florida State was just gashing them in the second half. That doesn't happen against Georgia typically. Not in the run game because they're rotating guys. You saw this past week. I'm just looking at the board over here. Warren Brinson, Stackhouse, Walthour, Logue, those guys all played. Williams, Jefferson, Ingram Dawkins, those guys all played. Christian Miller definitely played. They all had Jared. So of the 11 guys on the board I have as defensive linemen, I just named off 9 that played. I can't recall with Madden or Hall. You'll have to excuse me on that front. That's just a D-line, okay? And then the linebackers, definitely I saw Smile, although later in the game, Sorey was out there plenty. Dumas Johnson, Chambliss, obviously. Walker, I saw him out there. Allen, I saw him out there. I cannot recall Lightsey. I might be wrong about that. Smith was out there. I mean, Georgia played a lot of players. Now, I know they were playing Tennessee Martin, but they play a lot of players against everybody, y'all. And they are deep. They're deep. These other teams aren't deep. And that's what I wonder is if the machine at Georgia is not just, oh, these guys are really good. They are really good. There's just a lot of really good. That's the thing more than anything else. And that's what I saw last night with LSU. If LSU that I saw last night, it's not that there's no way they would beat Georgia. That we don't live in that world here at Dog Post. Okay? We live in a world where everybody can lose, and pretty much they can lose any league game. We don't live in that world, but we do live in reality, which is that if LSU is going to get ground down by a Florida State team that made that many errors. And Florida State could have scored close to 60 points last night had they gotten their act together in the first half. But LSU was just eating their lunch the whole time because of the first, their top 11 guys were playing. They weren't tired. They were exhausted in that second half. You could see it. And, I don't like to say, I shouldn't have said that they quit if I did earlier. That's not an acceptable way to talk about guys. But they were so exhausted that they couldn't go the same way that they should have been able to go. So I thought it was Brian Kelly, that notion was for his team. That was not about Georgia. That was about, hey, y'all, we're not there yet. Hello, we're not Georgia. Okay? They're not Georgia right now. The other quote from Brian earlier this year, talking about Bama and Georgia both, was Alabama and Georgia continue to hold the mantle of consistency in terms of playing for championships, and that's what we'll be looking to do at LSU, playing for championships consistently year in and year out. I know that based upon how we've recruited and how we'll continue to recruit, that we will have a football roster that will be able to compete against Georgia. Is that right now? No, it's not. But if it continues to be if we continue to do what we're doing, we're going to have a roster that can compete with Georgia, and then it's just a matter of getting it done, playing on the field, so that everybody can assess they've closed the gap. They've not closed the gap yet. I think that Florida State went out and did a very good job in the transfer portal of getting guys that make a difference. What I don't know is if Florida State did enough to, Clemson's got a really good defense. Their defense is, I don't know. I mean, LSU looked great on defense, and then the bottom fell out because they were just straight up exhausted. So I think the point of all of this is, no, they're not like Georgia. But what makes Georgia, and I would say Alabama special particularly, is they have waves of these guys. It is nonstop. That's the difference between LSU and a lot of teams and the Dawgs and Bama.